This that jumpin', yeah. This that jumpin', start like 23. This that jumpin', 2-4 like Kobe. This that jumpin', shoot my shot, then beat. This that jumpin', right around smoking my trees. This that jumpin', start like 23. This that jumpin', 2-4 like Kobe. This that jumpin', shoot my shot, then beat. This that jumpin', right around smoking my trees. I be ballin' in music like Kobe. I'm the greatest to ever do it, they don't know it.
All right. A little later than usual. Usually we try to get our shows going around 8 o'clock. I had a little bit of a hiccup. Poor Vince, he's having some sickness run through his house tonight, so he wasn't able to hop on. I sat here for an hour trying to think, who in the world could I reach out to? Could I throw the bat signal up to come and help me out tonight? And none other than my boy Mike Hughes decided, hey, I'll be generous enough to give you some time, hop on, talk a little sports with you. Mike, I appreciate it, man. You're always good to me, good to this stuff with us. So thanks for jumping on with me.
Appreciate you. I would like to not talk about Batman anymore, though, after the recent video games that have been released lately. Sorry. Don't even get me started today. I mean, it's been a rough 24 hours. I just saw, I don't know if this was even an old game, but I just found out what happened with the whole Suicide Squad Justice League video game that came out. Not a fan of the choices that were made, but it's okay. It's okay.
Well, I mean, video games are kind of my thing too, but I mean, we could save that for a totally different show. We could probably go another whole hour with that shit, but tonight, we're on Turtles Take. This is Vince's show. We're going to run with it. It's been a minute since I've talked much more than fucking Chicago Bears. So we got a couple topics for you guys tonight. We're going to hit on the Cubs, Caleb Williams, Justin Fields talk, the Chicago Bulls, Zach LaVine. I'm going to pull back some video from about a year and a half ago, my thoughts on this Bulls team, and we'll kind of see if I was correct on this. And then it's Black History Month, so we are going to honor some of Chicago sports' favorite athletes during this month. And tonight's feature, I think, is somebody that, as growing up as a Bears fan, especially in 2006, it was a hell of a ride watching this dude on the field. So first and foremost, man, you brought up the Fox article about the Cubs.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, why don't you refresh me on what that was all about?
Of course. About 4 or 5 hours ago, I saw Fox Sports MLB Network. I forget exactly what it was. It was the Fox Sports Baseball Network, whatever they do on Instagram. They had a little graphic pulled up about the most exciting and the most disappointing teams in baseball this offseason. And I was shocked to see the Chicago Cubs at number 1 for the most disappointing team. Yeah. After that, I believe was I think I have it on my phone pulled up still. It's the Toronto Blue Jays are at 2, which understandably so. After that is the Boston Red Sox, which was also surprising to me. I just felt like there was no expectation, so I didn't really see like what, you know what I mean? Like there wasn't anything really to base it off of. Then you had the Orioles, which might change after the Corbin Burns.
Right.
San Fran, who has been, on a down rail the last 4 or 5 years, and then the Marlins at number 6.
And the White Sox weren't on there at all?
No, sir. I think the South Loop has everybody jumping, so everybody's been quiet.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about a baseball team who hasn't done shit all off season, that's
you got to admit though, a diehard Cubs fan myself, for people who have just tuned into me for the first time, I would never give them their good graces unless it is truly earned. But to think they might have a night game where you pound a 450-foot bomb, walk-off bomb, and you can see the skyline of Chicago in the background in the South Loop, that's tough, bro. That would be, even on MLB The Show, I'd be playing at their stadium all the time.
All the time. See, like, that's the thing, man. Like, when the Bears were talking about leaving Chicago and the city and stuff and moving to Arlington Heights, like, nothing beats Sunday Night Football when they're panning over Soldier. You see the whole city behind it. It'd be similar, man, to that stadium out there if the Sox decided to move. I did hear some stuff about Cody Bellinger over the last couple days.
Yeah.
Cubs are still favored to land him. However, it's February 1st, man. The teams play baseball this month. lot of guys are still available. Most of them are Scott Boras clients.
Right.
I read a little piece that this could be potential collusion to drive the price down on Boras clients because dude asks for so much money, so many years. What are your thoughts on why some of these guys haven't been signed yet, and just where do you think Bellinger ends up?
Yeah, I think, from what I've heard is kind of the complete opposite. And I like that me and you have these opposite takes right now, because there's a lot of people who don't really know what's going on. You and me being those people, we
Right.
hear what we hear. From what I heard was Scott Boras told his clients, we are not signing until February 1st and beyond. And that was, for me, one of those conversations was like, well, why is that? And I think it's because teams are going to start getting desperate. Okay,
Right.
The Cubs don't want to meet you at 200. Okay, well, guess what? Pitchers and catchers report in less than 11 days starting tomorrow. We are almost in single digits to pitchers and catchers report, and Cody Bellinger still isn't there. You're face of the franchise, the most improved player, top 5 NL MVP candidate last year. What are you going to do? Are you going to go from 150 to 200? Hey, man, you're getting close. And so I like that you're saying that the league and the owners are kind of like, nah, we're going to drive down the prices. But the other argument to that is like, maybe it's Boras saying, okay, well, you look at now you don't have anything, and now I have all the leverage because baseball is right around the corner. These guys are millionaires. They can afford to sit. If you're a Boras client, you can afford to sit
Right.
more times than not. It's interesting. So I really don't know what the overall issue is in terms of what's going on with the Boras clients and why they're all waiting. I think it's one or the other. You know what I mean? It's black and white. There is no gray area. As it pertains to Cody Bellinger, I do believe there is a gray area. I do believe that they have mutual interest in each other. I still believe the Cubs are the favorite. I don't see why you would go to Toronto after the season you just had. I don't see why you would go to San Fran after. Listen, and no disrespect to anybody from the San Francisco area, but so many people have been vocal about, even Ken Rosenthal speaking about, it's not a good neighborhood where this ballpark is located, and people don't want to go play there when there's a crime rate and so on and so forth. Like, you play for the Chicago Cubs in Wrigleyville, more times than not, okay, you'll have a skyrise somewhere, if not anywhere else in the Wrigleyville area. Ben Zobrist used to ride his effing bike here, so
Yeah.
to the game. So it's relatively safe. It's not like we're on 35th and Shields, but I don't know. I don't know why this is happening. Maybe you have any other insight on that. I think it's really just, I don't know, because 200 to me, this is me, a 23-year-old who has no general manager experience, no head coaching experience in any degree in Major League Baseball, but $200 million for the comeback player of the year, a multi-time All-Star, Gold Glover, World Series champion, former MVP, a guy who batted over 300 last year and led the team in home runs.
Yeah.
Is that not worth $200 million?
I mean, Bellinger was such a spark for this Cubs team. Nobody expected him to do anything when he got here last year. Like you said, he had a 307 batting average, on base percentage of 356, slug 525, 26 home runs, 97 RBIs. Like that's a hell of a year.
Right.
And Wrigley seems to be a place that he's played well at. I don't know, most baseball players, they have like a stadium that or a field that they like to play at where they're able to hit better, field better, this and that. And he's played himself into this big contract. I mean, you're the Chicago freaking Cubs, third largest market in sports. Why not? What is stopping you from this? Unless it is, like you said, Scott Boras going out there telling his clients, hey, we're going to sit. We're not going to take any offers. We're going to just wait till these teams are so desperate that this price is going to go up. It's an interesting thought, because if that's the way it is, then obviously these teams are going to be super desperate, throw money at these guys, throw years at these guys. If it's the other way around, you're looking at a situation where Boras clients in the past have been known to get some outrageous contracts.
Right.
The dude does his work for his players. You know what I mean? And I think if you're talking collusion, that's kind of a big C word, and that's a big deal in sports. And I think the Cubs have to sign Bellinger after missing out on Shohei. I think, even though I don't think Shohei was ever really an option for them, I think he just used the Cubs as leverage to get the deal he wanted done. But it would definitely spark interest in this upcoming season to have Bellinger out there.
Yeah, for sure. And, going back to that, whole rankings of the most disappointing, I really haven't felt that way. And obviously working with the Iowa Cubs and talking to a bunch of cats over the last few years in the system, like I am big on these prospects. And I understand the guys that are coming up. I understand the BJ Murrays of the world, the Kevin Alcantaras, the Cade Hortons, the Ben Browns, the Pete Crow Armstrongs. Like I understand the process that's coming into fruition. And I think Jed does have an overall plan. Like you look at what's going to happen within the next 1 to 2 years, there's going to be a lot of roster spots that are going to be fighting for number one guys. And that's because we're going to have so many guys flying into Wrigley. James Triantos being one of those guys as well. I didn't want to leave him out. Arizona Fall League MVP. MVP. But yeah, I think bringing in Craig Counsell, okay, one of the top 3, top 5 managers in all of baseball. I'm not going to say number 1 because I know some people get upset about that. But, top 5. Top 5, top 3 for sure. Bring in Shota Imanaga, that's huge. He's going to be a huge arm in this rotation, a proven guy overseas. Maybe he can replicate that here. That could be amazing. And then obviously you bring in guys like Carl Edwards Jr. on, minor league deals. Maybe you got something there. But Hector Neris, obviously, 1.71 ERA last year. Guy's going to be a great setup man for Adbert Alzolay in the 9th. So it's going to be fun. I don't think this is the most disappointing team. And if you add Bellinger into that, I think it's a very successful offseason on top of looking at the prospects that you're bringing in as well. Because, of course, when we talk about this, no one's ever taken into account the guys that are on the way. We're
Right.
always talking about guys. Who'd you sign in the offseason? Okay, but I don't have to sign them if Cade Horton is going to be at the friendly confines come September. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it comes down to that at the end of the day. Were any of them Shohei Ohtani? No, of course not. But I keep saying Shota and Shohei, mixing it up. But it's horrible. But, it's definitely something for me to where if Bellinger ends up in a Cubs uniform, I think it's a successful offseason.
Yeah. What are the years you think that it's going to take for the Cubs to sign him? How many years?
I really don't think it's length. I think I think they're comfortable probably with 4 to 5. Now, what does that price tag look like? If it's 5, then you're going to look over $200 million. If it's 4, you're going to want 150 if you're the Cubs, So I think that's that middle ground. I think they're trying to figure out. Comfortable with 4 to 5, but the problem is you want 150 because you don't want to pay this guy $35+ million a year. And then the other side of it is like, well, if I'm going to be here for 4 years, I want to make the bank for my buck. I'd like $200 million.
Right.
It's like, it's a tough bargain, especially with the history. You have to play both sides. The history of Belly's injuries, losing a little bit of strength in his shoulders and legs. But on the other side of it, he looked pretty good. I don't care if his exit velocity was at an all-time low, 26 home runs or 26 home runs.
That's
so,
right.
at the end of the day, the basket's always going to be in your favor at Wrigley Field. So I think that's really where they're at right now is figuring out that final price tag.
Yeah, and you look at the team from last season, they played pretty well for the majority of the season. There were a little bit, slumps here and there, but most baseball teams go through all those highs and lows. But overall, the team performed pretty well for David Ross. And you bring in a guy like Craig Counsell, and you're looking at, like you said, top 3 manager in baseball who has been able to put his players when he was with the Brewers in position to be successful, and guys like Nico and all these other guys on the team, Ian Happ and all these guys, adding Cody Bellinger to that mix keeps that little nucleus together, man. And then you kind of just build off of what you had last season, a season that nobody thought was going to be even half as entertaining as it was, and now you're looking at potential playoffs and all this kind of stuff. What do you think they need to, other than Bellinger, where they need to kind of look to improve this team?
I think he's already here. I think he's been here for a while, and I think no one's really talking about it. I think, to your point, the Cubs won over 80 games with David Ross, but I'll take it even further. Despite of David Ross, they won over 80 games because I remember once upon a time there wasn't a roster spot available in April for a guy like Christopher Morel. This is a guy who played less than 110 games in 2023 and had over 25 home runs. I think if you give him even 130 games, 140 games, if he plays the whole season, I don't care. This is a guy who I believe if he, from start to finish, is fully healthy, Christopher Morel is going to be one of your most valuable players for the Chicago Cubs this year. I could see him knocking in over 40 home runs easy.
Yeah, he's got some power. It's been a minute
I
since
just
I've
need him
talked
in the
Cubs.
line. I just need him in the line.
Right. I mean, he's one of those guys that when he's in the lineup, he produces for you, and to take that bat out is not a smart idea. And it's been so nice talking Cubs. I love baseball. I'm so excited for pitchers and catchers. Get out to Wrigley. You know, I took my son to a Cubs game last year. It was Cubs in Cincinnati when they went like nuts hitting. So what was this, like 16-6 was the final score or something like that? It was crazy, man. I picked the best game to take my son to. He's a guy, he doesn't have the best attention span. So a game like that, he's able to just focus on balls going over the fence the whole time.
Yeah.
All right. So next topic that we talked about, it's no surprise, you know, there's something big coming up in the NFL world, April 25th. For those of you that don't know, it's the NFL draft. And in Chicago, quarterback is always the hottest topic on every single sheet when it comes to the Bears. Draft Caleb, stick with Justin. I think you were on with me a few weeks back when we talked about this, and I know where you kind of want to stick with Justin. I just wanted to go over some basic stats of these guys in their last year in college. So Caleb Williams, 68% completion, over 3,600 yards, 30 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Justin had 22 touchdowns passing, 6 interceptions, but then he also added 5 touchdowns. And there's a lot of comparisons between these two being very similar in the way that they play the game. I look at it like this. If the Bears didn't have that number 1 pick because Carolina was so bad, would this even be a conversation? Yeah. Where would they be with Fields? You know what I mean? Like, you were gifted this spot, this number 1 spot. If you didn't have it, you would stick with Justin, right? No questions asked. So my thought process is, if you were already going to stick with Justin and you just got blessed to have this 1 pick, why not trade that and just get a haul in return?
Right.
And I know that that's kind of your thought process too, right?
Yeah, I think, here's the hard part. And I want to make 2 points because I think the first one is probably the least important, but it's also something to pay attention to. The second one, I'm just going to have a moment because I'm over it. But, the first one is when you look at having back-to-back picks. Somebody said this the other day, and they were talking about Caleb Williams, but I went a step further and said, well, we kind of experienced that this season. You say, okay, let's rock out with Justin Fields. We don't need Caleb Williams. Let's say he becomes a Hall of Famer. Let's say Jaden Daniels becomes a Hall of Famer, or even a Drake May, which I would bet my bottom dollar he doesn't because he came out of UNC. And anybody who wants to argue with me about that, we can go super attack all day long. Sam Howell, Mitch Trubisky, we can do it all day. I can't go much further because that's the only guys that ever came out of the NFL for a quarterback at UNC at that level. So yeah, and they sucked. So it is what it is. I'm not doing it. No. But with that being said, let's say one of them becomes a Hall of Famer. We've already seen how a guy like CJ Stroud makes you kind of question, damn, what would CJ Stroud look like for the Chicago Bears? So you're going to potentially say that you could have, as Ryan Poles, drafted CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, et cetera, et cetera. Michael Penix is still in that conversation, a bunch of guys, and say 3 of those guys turn into elite quarterbacks, and Justin Fields ends up not being in a Chicago Bears uniform past 2025. That's a problem. That is a fireable offense. Elite quarterbacks in that class, you had the number 1 pick. You were the guy that could have said, I want them back-to-back years. You came up with none of them. Now Justin's out the building, and I'm sure because of the way this defense is being built, the way this offense is being built with Shane Waldron and company, I don't think we'll be in a situation to say we have number 1 ever again, unless Carolina is just that horrible moving forward. But it's possible. But, with that being said, I could definitely see the argument of, like, how are you going to have 2 back-to-back number 1 picks, still questions at quarterback, and not take one in back-to-back years? It's definitely a real conversation. But the second point I wanted to make is we're at this point in the year, man. I want to just take a walk with me. How many games has Caleb played in 2024?
2024? How many? No, none.
So
Yeah,
Caleb
tons.
hasn't played since the last time we've seen him.
Right.
What's changed in Chicago media? Everyone's talking about Caleb being the consensus. Everyone's talking about him being great. Everyone's talking about him being the Patrick Mahomes. I saw so many people on 670 The Score that were, saying that is a horrible take. And I love that they're saying that, because what the truth is we're at this point in the year where it's right before the Super Bowl ends, and then that window right before the draft. And that's when people are going to start just trying to talk about things. You and I are sitting here right now talking about the same thing. Everyone's trying to do it. I'm not knocking anybody who does. But the problem is, let's not sit up here and act like for an entire year, all we did was bash Caleb Williams. Hey, man, he's not having a great year against top 25 defenses. Hey, man, he doesn't really look like he's a team player. Hey, man, he kind of looks disconnected from the rest of his team. Okay, so what's changed in the last month? Why is everybody on the Caleb bandwagon now? It doesn't make sense.
Right.
Caleb just hasn't been doing anything, hasn't said anything, hasn't done anything to win us over since the season ended for him. Justin Fields balled out in the second half. We don't talk about that anymore because of one Green Bay game where Luke Getsy decided to run the ball 6 straight times up the middle like it was HP dive and I was 5 years old playing Madden against my dad. Like the reality is like people are fishing for narrative. And what I don't want to see happen is the comparisons of the Patrick Mahomes stuff. They did the same stuff with Zach Wilson. I remember they said he's the next Patrick Mahomes. I remember they made the comparisons, but you didn't watch a single game at BYU. You didn't watch him get torched by legitimate defenses in college football. The same way I watched Caleb not get torched, but definitely get exposed in certain degrees. It's just one of those things for me where it's like, how have you gotten better? How have you gotten more tick without you even playing a single game or a single snap? There's been nothing that's occurred, and all of Chicago, for whatever reason, probably because they're running out of content for the Bears, want to talk about Caleb Williams rather than a Marvin Harrison Jr.
Well, right, because the quarterback is a sexy topic, you know
Right.
what I mean? And the Bears, they always have quarterback problems. So you put yourself in this situation where you're, like you said, last year they passed up on a quarterback. This year you're sitting with the same situation. Do you make that pass again? I still think, you made a great point. What has changed from when Caleb last played to now? Nothing. And if you go back and look at Fields since he came back from his injury, he's played so much better than he did before.
Mm-hmm.
Ball control's a little bit better, making better reads, moving through the progression a little bit better, finding guys. There's still areas to improve, but I hate the narrative, and I hear it a lot, like, oh, well, Justin needs to do this, and he needs to do that, and he needs to fix this and fix that. So many quarterbacks in the NFL have that same situation.
Yeah.
This guy needs to fix that, or Baker Mayfield needs to fix this. Jordan Love needs to fix that. There's so many quarterbacks that are not perfect. Even Patrick Mahomes.
Your MVP who just put up 10 points in the AFC Championship game because he just forgot how to run the football. Like,
Right.
It's throwing in the triple coverage in year 6. So like,
Yep.
what are we talking about, bro? Like,
right. And clearly coaching for this offense was terrible all season long. Luke Getsy, I still to this day think that he was conspiracy theory me. They sent him here to just mess Justin Fields up for 2 years, and he did exactly that.
I'm sure they were excited about. I'm sure LaFleur was like, great hire.
Yeah, like he was just awful. Screen passes, nothing ever came together the way you're supposed to build on one play to the next. It was ass coaching. Fields, the offensive line played better later in the season, but last year it was terrible offensive line. Now you're looking at a defense that, give you another edge rush, get a new safety out there, maybe a second corner, and you're looking at top 5 defense potentially in the NFL.
Yeah,
They were top 3. I think they were the number 1 rushing defense in the NFL this year.
Led the league in interceptions.
Which was a complete flip from the year before where they were terrible. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that Ryan Poles has done well is he finds these young defensive players and they're impactful right away, and I think that that's a positive. This draft is going to have some good defensive players a little bit later in the draft. I still think Justin has proven to be a leader. He's taken the abuse from last season when you were built to lose. He stood in that pocket as much as he could, delivered. was the captain of that team. Everybody on this team respects him. I still think getting rid of Justin is going to do more damage than keeping him in terms of locker room mentality. You've heard a bunch of these guys this season afterwards come out and praise Justin's leadership and all this stuff. You take a step back getting a rookie quarterback most of the time. So you're looking at a team that played okay. 7 wins is good. We all expected that to be the end result, 7 to 8 wins this season. But just because of the way it started is, I think, what really shook the boat in terms of, you lost to the Packers right away when there was all that hype that the Bears were taking that next step. And then, you lose your defensive coordinator. Then 2 weeks later, you're firing your running backs coach. And it's just a lot of headaches that were all self-inflicted.
Right.
But none of that had to do with Justin Fields.
Right. And then you equate 2 of those wins coming from a different quarterback, and that was a part of the problem as well. You bring in Tyson Bagent and you understand, there was that small moment where the city was like, maybe Bagent's the next Brock Purdy. And it very quickly realized he wasn't.
Exactly.
But, you still had those rumbles, and there were still some fans that thought, hey, maybe Justin Fields' time in Chicago was over way before the season even ended.
Right. And I'm not saying don't draft a quarterback, because I believe you should get a quarterback every year if you can, depending on where you're going to pick. You wait till the 3rd round, get a guy. I don't see any harm in that. But the haul that you can get for that number 1 pick, man, I'm telling you, it is.
Yeah.
I think it's too enticing for Ryan Poles. And I think that this narrative about Caleb Williams and being so good, NFL teams put all this stuff out there to try to, put up smoke screens and all that stuff. This could all just be a ploy for them to try to drive the price up for that number 1 pick, see what they can get. Bears rule the sports world in Chicago, especially right now. Super Bowl's coming up, which, I'm excited for. I got a bunch of buddies who hate Patrick Mahomes just because he's so good. Like when people hated Tom Brady and shit. So I'm looking forward to it. I want Patrick Mahomes to just come out and win another one. Andy Reid retire, and Kansas City Chiefs are feeling good. But this is the moment I've been waiting for. The Chicago Bulls. A year and a half ago in November, I was on with Tarbill on my old show, Sport Court, and we were going over which Chicago sports team was in the best position going forward. And this is what I said about the Chicago Bulls. I know you kind of wanted to give the Bulls some credit. Let me just...
It's tough, man.
I'm going to say I hate the Chicago Bulls team as currently constructed. And I know, I'm on Twitter a bunch during Bulls games and all kinds of stuff.
You said you hate how the Bulls team is constructed?
Yes. I think, obviously, you gave Zach a max contract, right? And
he deserved it.
Why not? I guess he deserved it. I don't think he's a max player. I think he's a good player, but he's shown in crunch time to not have the best, ball handling decisions, and he can't hit the 3. If you're going to pay a guy max money, he's got to be a consistent 3-point shooter. The NBA is all about shooting the 3. Moving the ball around, getting a 3-point guy open. Who on this Bulls team is a consistent knockdown 3-point shooter? Exactly.
Nikola
Nobody.
Vucevic.
Vucevic? No thanks.
Vuce is not.
And people are like, oh, well, once Lonzo Ball comes back, they're going to... Dude, I loved the way that they played in the beginning of last season, right? DeMar had a fantastic year. DeMar's playing 2002 basketball right now. The mid-range game is
The mid-range is dead. Don't
dead.
let Vince hear you. I hope he's not listening right now.
I hope he is, because the mid-range is dead. Maybe not for him, because he's good at it, but overall, you got to be able to stretch.
It's the same thing as those traditional number 5 centers, right?
Right.
Nobody wants a Shaq on their team anymore.
No, you can't. The
this
league
isn't
is Steph
2002,
Curry.
yeah.
It's Steph Curry. It's Trae Young. It's Ja Morant. It's
KD.
I guess Kevin Durant. Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's the future of basketball.
KD. He says, "I guess KD." Like KD isn't. KD's
I mean,
the
if
man.
Kevin Durant wanted to come to the Bulls, I guess I'd be okay with it. I don't think he
I guess
necessarily.
I'd be okay with it.
But
It'd be all right.
I don't see this Bulls team doing anything. I think, if I'm being honest, I think they're the worst situation of all the teams because they're
Behind
in a
the
situation.
Blackhawks.
Okay, maybe not the Blackhawks, but they're in a situation where they are in a rough spot in terms of the contracts they have on that team, in terms of the productivity of players that they have on that team.
Well, they went out and bought to compete now, right? That's the problem is
right.
They went out and got these guys in DeMar DeRozan, in Lonzo Ball, Nikola Vucevic. You went out and signed these guys for fairly big money deals, anticipating that you were going to be a contender either last year or this year.
All right. So I feel pretty confident that what I said was pretty spot on, other than maybe the Trae Young thing. Still on the fence about him. But I got some stats. The Jimmy Butler trade that brought Zach LaVine over here, the big, after what Rajon Rondo, Dwayne Wade, Jimmy Butler team failed. After that trade, the Bulls have played, 513 games since Butler's trade. They are 210 and 303, 97 games below 500. This season, when Zach is on the court, the Bulls are 10 and 15. Without him, they're 12 and 11. So they have a better win percent. They have a better winning record when he's not playing. Guys have played better. Kobe White has become really one of the best players on this team. I think Zach, I said it then, I'll say it now. I don't think he's a max player. I think he's a guy who he can come in and give you some points, boost his stats at the end. My thought process is if he was that good, teams like the Clippers or the Lakers or who else are good to Boston, the Heat, Sixers, all these teams would find a way to get him on their team. And there's been rumors that no team is interested in dude, right? So I'd love to hear your take on Zach LaVine. I know we were supposed to talk about this a few weeks back on your show when you were talking about it. But yeah, I'm interested to see what your thoughts are on this Bulls team as currently constructed.
Yeah, before the max deal, I was very hesitant and I was very open about how I wanted to sign and trade Zach LaVine, give him max dollars, and then get Donovan Mitchell out of Utah. I thought that would be the better fit for the Chicago Bulls team. I believe Donovan Mitchell is a max player, and he's showing that this season and last season with the Cleveland Cavaliers. A lot of people told me that they were the same player and they were the same play style, and that's been the furthest thing from the truth since. But I do want to give Zach a little apology statement because I do love the way he's come back. I do love the way he's played with his team when he's healthy. It was a small sample size, I believe, out of the 7 games since he's come back. He started in 5 of them, and he's averaging 15 points per game, 17 points per game, something like that. Injured again, but this team had success with both Zach and Kobe on the court, and I think that his attitude changed and his perspective changed of having to be a team player and getting other guys involved, getting guys like Patrick Williams, getting guys like Andre Drummond and Kobe White involved. So I will give him his flowers there because I think it's important. I got to keep that same energy. That's what I wanted to see from Zach. I wanted to see Zach be more passive. I wanted to see Zach take better shot selections. I wanted to see him, in the crunch time, okay, are we going to create an ISO play for DeMar DeRozan to maybe 50% make it, 50% not make it for the millionth time from Billy Donovan? Or are we actually going to draw up a play for our best player in Kobe White? And time again, I believe the biggest issue with this team is Billy Donovan and how he wants to construe it. I felt like, especially the first game after Zach LaVine left, they ran the offense through Nikola Vucevic. And that was one of the biggest things for me where it's like, okay, well, now you understand. Nikola Vucevic is the offense. You're getting guys wide open by doing so, and guys like Kobe White, guys like DeMar, they're really able to utilize them to the best of their ability. I feel like you have a team full of good players. They just aren't complementing each other well with the style of basketball that they're being promoted and they're being asked to play. Like you said earlier in that video, we're playing 2000s basketball with the mid-range game, and a lot of these guys aren't mid-range guys outside of a couple. I think there's levels to it. I think Zach either ends up with the Philadelphia 76ers or he ends up with just another team that's just going to come out of the blue. I couldn't sit here and tell you. I think the 76ers have the biggest chance, in my opinion, if they want to really make a move, especially with Embiid going down. We don't know the timetable on that. And, I've heard other people say, maybe Kendrick Perkins even being vocal saying, I think they should shut him down the whole year for the longevity. The 76ers are in a situation right now, not to get too long on that tangent, where they're going to be looking to potentially, get a max contract slot at the end of this season. They trade James Harden away to the Los Angeles Clippers. They don't ask for another max player or caliber players in return. These are all one-year deals. These are all guys who won't be on the team moving forward going into 2025, 2024, 2025. And if we are to take on those contracts, which will be expiring deals, the Bulls in turn would be able to open that slot. Now, when you look at that, I think you could also look at teams like we heard earlier last week, the Detroit Pistons. Everybody's talking about we need Cade in them. We need Cade. We need Jaden Ivey. I don't think any of that's happening. I think what you would get more is Bojan Bogdanovic, a Joe Harris, and maybe a pick. And I doubt it's this year's because that one's going to be pretty high. But really what I think that you're going to get for a guy like Zach at this point in his career, because I do agree with you, a lot of people don't want to take on that contract. A lot of people don't want to give up draft capital. I think you're going to get a lot of expiring deals so the Bulls can open a max slot in free agency or something close to it. I know Bojan would have another year after this, but Bojan's averaging 20 points per game or more this year. So he's pretty solid. Joe Harris, another three-point shooter, got another three-point shooter in Joe Harris. I would take that. I know a lot of people call me crazy, but I think that's really where, if you're looking at it from that perspective, I agree with you. I think when you look at what Zach LaVine's worth is right now, look at what James Harden was able to get for the 76ers, just a bunch of expiring deals, potentially flipping them at the deadline for a Zach LaVine or somebody else, a Klay Thompson, a Draymond, not even going to say that, a Klay Thompson or a Zach LaVine. No one wants Draymond. But, I think that's really where I'm at with it. Everybody else wants to go big or go home, and we're just not in that place to demand those things.
No, this Bulls team, and for the last couple seasons, man, the front office just kind of sat on their hands. Yeah. You knew Lonzo was hurt. They knew the extent at which he was hurt. They did zero to try to fix that problem. They were playing well when Lonzo was on the floor, and unfortunately it didn't last long enough. You're looking at a team with some pieces. I mean, I think Caruso is probably the most valuable piece on this team for any team that's looking for a player right now in terms of defense. You just signed Vooch, so you're just kind of stuck with that. It's a weird situation. I think this Bulls team, they just need to start fresh. I think that you're looking, there's nothing that's like, this is the path forward for this team. There is no path right now. You're just kind of sitting in this limbo, unsure of what's going on. The trade deadline is February 8th, and there's no conversations about any of these guys really going anywhere. Poor DeMar, that dude's been a soldier since he's been here. He's just kind of going to waste on this team. And
he already did that in San Antonio.
Right.
It's just been war, man.
Right. He had the one good season where he was in the MVP, talks and stuff. And
in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. And it just was nothing now. So it's interesting. This Bulls team has been I love when the Bulls are good. Yeah. Those Derrick Rose years, man, they were so fun to watch. The United Center going. It's just.
Even the first half of 21 was insane.
Yeah.
I remember being at the game right before COVID literally obliterated the Hornets and the Bulls. It was LaMelo versus Lonzo, and it was jumping, bro. I mean, it was incredible. It was an amazing atmosphere. People were still wearing masks. It was so weird. But it was not that's weird, but the whole stadium was wearing masks. Mm-hmm. It was mandated. It was crazy. But it was like Bulls fans showed up and showed out in the beginning of 2021. And we had hoped that this was going to be one of the next great rosters, or at least the next playoff roster, I would say. And it's just, a couple play-in exits, a first-round exit to the Bucks, which is a respected one. I could get down with that. But it just wasn't good. It was a bad run, I think.
Yeah, they've had a hard time filling these spots since Rose got hurt. It's just kind of been downhill since then. It was bad before Rose. They kind of luck into these players. They got Michael Jordan, and to think he did not go first overall is crazy. You know, you get lucked into the number 1 pick with Derrick Rose, you know, and
then you almost don't take him either. So
right. So I mean, you're looking at a front
It's
office
like
and
it's
ownership
easy.
group. And if you look at the ownership, obviously it's the same. Jerry Reinsdorf owns the Bulls and the White Sox, and they're both just kind of these middling teams that don't really do much ever. And it's frustrating as a fan. You know, I want to be able to go to these Bulls games and have that atmosphere, that playoff type of vibe in the stands, you know, with people going fucking wild, man. Bulls fans are so loyal to this team. They deserve a product that's worth watching,
Mhm.
you know, and we haven't gotten that.
Yeah.
So now we're on to our little last topic. February, Black History Month. I wanted to do something a little bit different where it doesn't necessarily have to be the greatest black athlete in Chicago sports, but it's a guys that have meant something to the Chicago sports fan. The first guy I could think of today was Devin Hester. I had the privilege a couple of years back of interviewing Devin back in 2021 when he was first eligible for the Hall of Fame. Down to earth dude. You know, Bears fans watching him starting in 2006 when he was just half of the Bears points almost, you know. Maybe that's a little extreme, but every time the dude got the ball kicked to him, there was that thought, hey, he's going to take it back.
Yeah. Change the rules.
Exactly. I don't know what your favorite memory other than the Super Bowl obviously was one of my favorite memories of him, but that Cardinals game when the Bears were just ass the whole game, and then he runs that ball back in the fourth quarter to go ahead, and the Bears end up winning that game. That's the Bears are who we thought they were, ramped by Dennis Green, and that's one of my favorite memories of Hester. What are some of yours, or what is one of yours?
Yeah, my favorite one of Hess, man, especially, you know, growing up, born in 2000, Hester and Urlacher were my guys. Peanut, you know, guys like that. Tim Jennings, of course, and Josh McCown. You know, you have to talk about some of the GOATs of my generation for me. And I was never the strongest kid. I was never the tallest kid, but I was the fastest motherfucker you ever met. I'll promise you that. The streets know my cues. If you ever did track and field, they know. I'm so for real too. To this day, I have a bad Achilles, but I will bust anybody's ass any day. $5 or more, I'm down to do it. Because Devin Hester was my motivation all the time. Lacrosse, baseball, football. Devin Hester was the guy I was watching. My favorite memory of D. Hess was before my dad passed away, man. It was crazy because, you know, you wanted to see him do it in a Bears uniform, but unfortunately he didn't. He broke the all-time record. I believe that was with the Atlanta Falcons. I don't think that was the stint with the Seattle Seahawks yet, because I think that was just for the playoffs. So I think it was Atlanta when he broke the all-time record for most return kicks. And I mean, man, just to see him hit that accomplishment was so much more because of the tenured with the Chicago Bears. Obviously, I had already had that relationship. There's so many memories we can talk about. Probably not many of him as a wide receiver, but most being of him on special teams. No, I had to humble a little bit. Couldn't glaze him the whole time. But you know, there's so many great moments, and I think the favorite one was just like, hey, here's that verification that we already knew you had. Like, you are the greatest to do this because now you have the all-time record. So to see him do that, sitting with my dad, we were watching it in his room. I was like, yo, I was downstairs, he was upstairs. I was like 2 minutes ahead. I just ran up, just like, yo. He was like, don't tell me, and we watched it together. And it was absolutely crazy, man. And what a guy, what a human being, what a person. I love listening to his interviews because he still has his accent. He still has like the humbleness of his humble beginnings and where he came from. I just love hearing him talk ball. And I think, you know, if you are any person of interest or any person who has a vote in the NFL Hall of Fame, Devin Hester has to be a first ballot Hall of Famer to me.
Yeah, like I said, I interviewed him a few years back with where I was before I started this whole thing. And yeah, he's just such a humble dude. Like, for a guy who changed football, and people are, oh, well, they changed the rules.
Devin Hester.
Right, because of Devin Hester, whether people like it or not. And the swag that he just had every time, you know, that Soldier Boy, crank that playing when they're about to kick off to him, and that Super Bowl kickoff, opening kickoff, nobody's ever done it since. Nobody will ever do it again. I truly believe that.
Yeah. Maybe
I remember
lucky soul, but
yeah, maybe one, but he was the first. 2006. Damn, how old was I? 16.
I was
I was 16. I was hitting in the room with my dad, and he's a diehard Bears fan. So the fact that they were at the Super Bowl itself was amazing, and then to start the game like that gave Bears fans so much hope. And then obviously we know what happened later in that game, but it's just moments like that, especially during those times with the Bears where Hester was the entertainment on that team for the most part, and he might not have been the greatest wide receiver. He wasn't the greatest cornerback. That's why they changed him to a wide receiver. But he's definitely, without a doubt, somebody that should be in the Hall of Fame. If you're the greatest at your position, you change the game that you play. What's the other argument for not being in the Hall of Fame?
Right.
I believe he's a finalist this year, and we find out here pretty soon if he's going to get in. So I'm looking forward to that. But
that'll be crazy. That'll be like that's one of those ones for me where I'm like, I love that because I actually I want to see Mongo make it, and I think Mongo and his family deserve that. We talk about that all the time. Fuck doing that when somebody's already passed on. Let them get that recognition of understanding, like, hey, I made it to the Hall of Fame. It's I'm not with that. I think it's corny. I don't like when the league does stuff like that. You recognize people while they're here. I think we could have a baseball Hall of Fame conversation all day long about how much of a joke I think that is, just because of the years of eligibility to be a Hall of Famer. Bro, like, I'm a Hall of Famer.
Right.
Yep. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I shouldn't. Oh, if you don't get it in the first 2 years, we forget you existed. What are you so talking stupid about? So I'm praying for it, man. Him, Mongo, a couple other cats. Honestly, fuck it. All of them deserve to go because those are our guys. But those two specifically, man, I mean, those are game changers.
And the only thing that sucks about Mongo is like the fact that he was on a team that has so many Hall of Famers.
Right. That's
the only argument that it is against him is, oh, well, there's so many guys from that team. So, well, yeah, because that team was the best team.
Right. Ever.
Like,
cry about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And my dad, he used to drive limos down in the city, and he told me a couple stories about how he'd pick up Mongo and his wife from the airport, and like he just would say, dude was so nice, just like this big ass teddy bear, man, just always polite to my dad and shit. And it's cool. He's got a picture somewhere of him and Mongo after he picked him up one time. So I definitely think that he deserves to get in. I think that, with where he's sitting right now with his health.
Yeah. Why not?
Right. Why not? There's no reason not.
If you're going to give it to him, my thing is always, if he's eventually going to make it anyways, and the situation, you're the NFL. If you want to do it, you can do it. And I feel like if you care about what happens to your players after they retire, like they claim they do, it's not always about CTE. It's not always about mental health. Sometimes it's just about what's good and what's best, what's something a human being would do. And that's something Mongo deserves, man. He earned it. He put his body on the line. And he, to that point about the Super Bowl thing, it's like, I didn't hear anybody say that about Walter. I didn't hear anybody say that about Dan, about Mike, about any of these other cats that were Otis or any of them. So why is that a negative for Mongo? And it's like, you know what I mean? So I don't want to hear any of that. You know what I mean? Like, even Kevin Butler deserves his love for what he was able to do as the kicker of that team. I don't care how many times you were kicking because of sweetness or how many times you didn't have to kick because the defense was crazy. But it's at the end of the day, man, I mean, these guys deserve it. And it's a joke. It's a joke if he doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, I appreciate you short term, or, I gave you very short notice. I was like, hey, man, can you hop on? When? Now. You gave me 50 minutes. I appreciate that. Thank you guys for tuning in. Good conversation. We'll be back next week to get you set for the Super Bowl. Mike, you're always welcome. Why don't you let everybody know kind of where they can find you?
Yeah, man. Always check me out. TikTok, Instagram, theshy.kid. It's the CHI.kid. I had to make sure because one guy told me that for months he was writing SHY, and I was like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what even to say. I'm not even saying that to be funny. I just have to clarify that now. But yeah, you could also see that. You screenshot it right there. if that didn't help you at all. But man, I
So
appreciate
here.
you having me on here, man. Turtles Take. I'm
Yeah.
a first time turtler.
Yeah, first time Turtles Take. Too bad Turtle wasn't here, but I hope everybody at the house is feeling better sometime soon, and
Madness.
we will be back next week.